behalf of Afma, I would like to welcome all webinar viewers. You're the most important participants in this exercise, and I hope you find it helpful as you consider your career, or in the case of those that have broader responsibility, the staff training requirements of your firm. As the industry body for financial markets, Afma is committed to supporting professionalism in the conduct of business on our markets. Afma's accreditation program is a central part of our implementation strategy. Markets that are effective and fair are dependent on professionalism and the ability of those working in the financial markets. Now, a professional is a person who is technically competent in completing their duties in accordance with the applicable law. But they must also observe the values and policies of their employer, understand relevant industry standards, and have the ability to make judgments in accordance with those values. It's in this context that Afma is delighted to partner with Macquarie University in the provision of the Financial Market Certificate, which is designed and will be delivered to support these outcomes. The benefits of being a well-trained financial professional in financial markets are considerable. For you, the individual, it is a vital step on the pathway to a satisfying and rewarding career. For the firm, employees that exhibit strong professional values earn regulator respect and promote client confidence that sustain business and creates new opportunities. For the economy, it benefits from a more efficient and resilient financial system. So, to start us on a discussion of the education program to help sustain and build this capacity in financial markets, I would now like to hand over to Lindesay Brine, who is a director at the Macquarie Applied Finance Centre and a course facilitator, and he will provide you with important practical information on the Financial Market Certificate program. Thank you, Lindesay.
Thank you, David, for that introduction. It gives me great pleasure to provide you with an outline of the Financial Markets Certificate. We're delighted to partner with Afma on this course, and we look forward to working with them and you over the next few years. I'll start the proceedings today with just an overview of the program. Our aim is to build on the current structure that exists in the Afma accreditation program of core plus elective, but by breaking down the core unit into smaller chunks, including conduct and ethics across the units, whereas at the moment it is a separate course. The core is split into an orientation module, which is simply there to introduce you to how this works, then to concepts, transactions, and risk, which together, when combined with an elective, will earn the Financial Markets Certificate. This will be a micro-credential, which will be at the bachelor's level in lieu of the current diploma level. Afma members can then use this certificate to also gain Afma accreditation. And this credential can also potentially be used for further study at Macquarie University, and I will come back to that. And now I'd like to look at the approach we've taken with the other unit, with all of the units. Our aim was to build on the current accreditation to ensure accredited individuals have the knowledge required to operate in the industry and also build the skills which will assist them to operate effectively. And so the learning objectives are aligned to the assessments and the activities are aligned with both of those to make sure that people have skills and knowledge to be able to operate in this industry. Bringing in techniques and activities which we use in the university, together with practitioner perspectives and input, are designed to ensure the learning experience is engaging and relevant. This also assists us to lift the qualification from diploma level to bachelor level and then provides pathways onto further postgraduate study. We've retained the quizzes and the workshop from the previous Afma course. We've built on them a bit more while taking a different line on other assessments to ensure we are effectively assessing critical thinking and communication. Looking now at the units themselves, you can see that each of them is broken down into a number of different topics. And we've taken the opportunity to bring that risk management principles unit together to bring some of the common risk elements of each of the electives into that unit. While each of those electives covers risk management issues that arise in that particular elective, the risk management principles unit provides that base to be able to assess those activities. It's not to say the electives no longer cover all these things, they do. We want to build on what is there, and equally The financial market products section of financial markets transaction introduces all of those electives, but it doesn't go into great detail. Also, you can see there that there are conduct and ethics elements across each of the units, and we want to make sure that they are very well covered. Now, each of those units is across a 6-week term and has a similar profile. The way we've set this up is that there are 3 weeks of structured activities via our ProLearn system with a welcome and a Q&A in that first week. It's self-paced, so students can work ahead if they'd like. In the 4th week, there is an online workshop. The workshop and the week 1 welcome will be on Microsoft Teams to allow for the widest participation. And over time, we will work towards having hybrid sessions with the workshop available as a face-to-face class or simultaneous online workshop. The 5th and 6th weeks are for finalising the assessment pieces and for questions and feedback before finalising that final assessment. Turning to those assessments, as I said, we've kept the quizzes from the previous course, and we've actually built in some more questions to give us a little bit more variety. This assesses those Afma learning requirements. There's a workshop which is designed to apply what you've learnt throughout the units in realistic settings, and equally just to make sure that there's an opportunity for people to engage with each other and actually discuss what they've learned. The workshops then lead on to the short answer assignment and final report. And equally, those workshops are an opportunity to canvass issues that might arise out of those assessment pieces. And we'll incorporate more elements of critical thinking and communication to ensure that we are assessing the overall learning outcomes we're looking to meet for the overall course. One of the benefits of lifting that qualification from diploma to bachelor level is that we are able to bring the Afma Financial Markets Certificate as a pathway into our suite of courses in the Applied Finance Centre. So the Graduate Certificate of Finance, Graduate Diploma of Applied Finance and Master of Applied Finance. The Afma Financial Markets Certificate provides 20 credit points towards the foundation units in each of those degrees. And then that brings you into that ecosystem of all of the things that are available as part of the Applied Finance Centre. And you can see there on the left where there are a broad range of people that engage in the Master of Applied Finance, from non-finance people to finance workers wanting to learn more specifics about a particular part of their industry, and then financial professionals who want to move on to other more senior roles. So those opportunities are all available as part of the Master of Applied Finance. And now I'd like to pass back to Suzanne for a chance to consider some of the questions that will have arisen while I've been speaking. Suzanne, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. Okay, so some of the questions that we've got here. The first question I'll direct to you, Lindsay. If I do this certificate, will I automatically go into the Master of Applied Finance program?
It's not an automatic process, and it all depends on qualifications. So the requirements for entering into the Master of Applied Finance are that you have a degree and work experience. Now, the way we do this is the Graduate Certificate of Finance provides that degree, so you can do that before the Masters, or if you've got a degree in another discipline, you can then do a longer version of the Masters. But the critical aspect is the work experience. If you don't have sufficient professional work experience, then you can't actually get into the Master of Applied Finance. So that is a critical requirement. What this certificate does is it does give you part of those financial units, those foundation units, and gives you the chance to sort of convert your existing degree, whether it's if it's not in finance, to a finance degree.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So the next question, I'll pose that to you, Guy. The Afma course has historically had a strong practical focus. With the move to Macquarie University, is there a danger that we might lose that practical focus? Good question.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for that question. We're confident that the material will continue to have a practical focus. We have put safeguards in the mechanisms to ensure that, starting off with Macquarie Business School is well regarded in the field of applied finance. We also have established a an advisory committee with Afma. So Afma and Macquarie have a regular advisory committee member representative forum that will ensure that we will have individual practitioners and member representatives maintaining the curriculum. And we also will, I think, quite importantly, not focus just on the technology and technical aspects of the material, but also the processes and skills that people need for performing job roles. And I think it's that aspect which is the most exciting and most constantly changing aspect of our work in market, especially given technology and regulatory changes.
Thanks, Guy. And perhaps you could extend just on that. What changes will we actually see in the program?
So as Lindesay was saying, I mean, this is moving from a diploma to a higher level. And what we're trying to do is ensure a greater focus on critical thinking and equipping people with skills to be a lifelong learner and also to be successful without getting out of date, because things are moving very quickly. So focus on critical thinking and also creating a rewarding and engaging learning experience through the material. And as I think Lindesay alluded to, we're going to build on an established and successful program to make the material even more contemporary and relevant, and to encourage a passion for lifelong learning.
Great. So can you talk, I mean, Lindesay did talk a little bit about using Teams and other technology and some of the components of week 1 and week 4 being live workshops. Can you talk a little bit more about how the program is taught?
Sure. So if you think about the program, we have, as Lindesay showed, those units. And so within a unit, so that could be the first unit is financial market concepts. That will typically, you'll find a unit typically consists of 4 to 5 topics, which is the slide that Lindesay showed. And within each topic, you'll start off with a scenario. And so this is very much building on some really exciting research that we've been involved in. People learn better by stories. And so we start off each topic with a scenario. And the idea of the scenario is to create in the learner's mind a situation, possibly a problem, and that the participant sort of says, oh gosh, I don't have all of the tools necessary to answer those or address that story. And then we dive into the lessons, which have a series of activities that then give and equip the participant with some tools and skills that they can then use to try and make a recommendation in that situation.
Thanks very much, Guy. So we're getting some great questions here about specifics, about specific units. One of the questions that we have here is, does a participant still need to complete the Afma conduct and ethics module? Guy, if you could answer that one for us. So
let me, I'll answer that from one particular angle, but then I might ask David to take a broader perspective from an Afma context. So participants will cover the conduct and ethics curriculum throughout the program. And as Lindesay showed in the slides, you could see right through all of the units, there was a component of conduct and ethics, both in terms of application, but also in terms of some of the conceptual material. So that is covered throughout the material. So there's no separate conduct and ethic unit offered in this certificate. The application, as I said, is considered in some form in every unit, and much of the underpinning knowledge is introduced in financial markets transactions and further extended in the risk management principles. So that's from this particular perspective, but I think, David, it would be useful for you just to pick up on that.
Thank you. Really, just to reiterate what you said, Guy, the intention here is to make the learning process more efficient and more engaging for our students by integrating the conduct and ethics competencies into the courses that are delivered in the core modules. So rather than treat it as a separate item, it now becomes part of the learning process throughout the core modules. We do think this will be a better learning process, and it was something we would have targeted to do as Afma in any event. So from our perspective, it's a progressive step.
So just as a question on that, David, will conduct still be offered as a separate module to some people?
Conduct and ethics will be provided to people who are currently accredited and need to achieve that competency to retain their accreditation. So our board has taken a position that they should do so by the end of this year. So we need to obviously service that community, and we will do that. And if some individuals saw a benefit in studying that module, that would be available in that time period as well.
Thanks very much, David. So we've got some specific questions. One from Stephanie here. Stephanie is asking, are we able to take an elective, for example, foreign exchange elective only, if we have already completed the Afma course or accreditation previously? Lindsay.
So I'm assuming that Stephanie has done the whole program and is an accredited dealer. If they need to do another individual elective, I would imagine that would be okay. Guy, is that the case?
That's correct. It would be, they wouldn't get the benefits of some of the things you've outlined in terms of the pathways, but if their organisation says, right, you've done the debt elective and now you need to also now get some FX, then that would be available for people to enrol on as individual units.
Yep.
Great. So we've got a great question here from Nathan, and it's how quickly can you complete the certificate? Is there a fast track option? Take that one, Lindsay?
Sure. I was actually going to go on to say that you can actually complete the whole program, that is the 3 core units and an elective within 8 months, because each unit has a 6 week time frame. So you take each one consecutively. And so there are some specific dates that are where there's due dates. So they are important to meet. So within 8 months, you can get it done.
Okay. Another question here from Diogo, which is just in relation to the portion of virtual versus face-to-face or in-person teaching. What portion is virtual versus in-person? In
the certificate?
Yeah.
Then in this one, there's a Q&A welcome webinar, which is done on Teams in the first week. That's about an hour. That's where everyone gets to meet each other. And then the workshop is the next time that you'll be in a virtual room with anyone. However, obviously that depends on whether there's demand for more sessions as well. So I imagine in week 5 and 6, if people needed to speak to the facilitator, they could. However, it is largely a self-paced program.
Great, thanks for that clarification. Also another question from Nathan, does the NRG module cover all commodities? Guy?
No, not at this stage, no.
No, okay. All right, another question here from Colin. Currently, back office staff are only required to complete the core module and ethics module. Will back office staff be required to complete an elective as well in the new system? David.
Thanks for that. I think that's a question which I'm happy to take. The answer is no. So what's currently happening is the provision of education is being transferred to Macquarie University. The rules around accreditation won't change, but the comparable would be that the core modules would be required to be taken, and that incorporates as conduct and ethics, as I mentioned earlier. So the elective would not be a requirement for operations people. That's at this stage. Going forward, accreditation itself could evolve, of course, but that's not changing at present.
Thank you, David. So perhaps David and Guy, I'll pose this next one for you both to answer. Guy, we'll start with you. Clinton's actually asking, I've completed the Afma core module and was to start debt markets within the next month or 2. What will the old financial markets core module give credit for in the new format for those that have partly completed it? And will extra units need to be completed?
So at the moment, there is no transition from the current Afma program into the Macquarie Business School Financial Markets Certificate. Now, we are looking at that with a view to try and seeing if we can find a pathway. But for the time being, what we've discussed is the idea that if you're on the current Afma Financial Markets program, you should continue with that program. David, would you like to add a few comments to that?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. That is the case. So in that particular instance, we should be able to facilitate anyone who's in that position. We are also, though, exploring, as Guy mentioned, the opportunity for people to take, say, a Macquarie elective and have that recognised for Afma accreditation purposes. Now, that may mean that you may not be entitled to receive a financial market certificate, which is a university award, but you would be recognised for the purpose of Afma accreditation. So that's the current thought there. The transition program will allow for people in that situation to become Afma accredited.
Great, thanks for that clarification, David. Another question here from Diego, and it's, does the graduate certificate constitute full Afma accreditation, or is that given upon completion of the Master of Applied Finance? Lindesay, could you answer that one?
Sure. So the completion of the 20 credit points of the financial market certificate and being an employed by an Afma member gets you the Afma accreditation from Afma. What it does, though, is it gives you essentially half of our graduate certificate. So what I would say is that if you do the financial market certificate, you get your Afma dealer accreditation, then you come to Macquarie Uni, and if you meet the entrance criteria, you've already done half of the graduate certificate. Or in the case of the Master of Applied Finance, you've done half of the foundation units.
Perfect. So our next two questions, Lindesay, I know that you've got those ready to roll in the next couple of slides, and it's how can I enroll in the project from Dennis, and also Gillian's asking, are there courses to start at specific dates, and how frequently will these occur during the year? So thank you for that intro, Gillian and Dennis, and over to you, Lindesay, to answer those two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, thank you very much for that beautiful segue into this slide. So the first term that we are offering is starting on the 22nd of March. And that will be the first two of the core units. That's financial markets concepts and financial markets transactions. Anyone who has not got prior experience or prior learning will actually start on financial markets concepts. There may be people who have the ability to seek recognition of prior learning for financial markets concepts, in which case they would apply for that recognition of prior learning and then enroll in financial markets transactions. And then in term 2, we will add the risk management principles unit, which will enable people to start that process of getting the risk side completed, and that starts 17th of May. And then July term 3, all of the electives will be offered subject to there being minimum numbers, and each of the core units will also be offered. So that means that there's the ability every 6 weeks to roll into a new, or every 6 weeks or so, you can roll into a new unit. And then if you start financial markets concepts in term 1, by term 4, you will have finished your elective. And so by the end of October, you will be done. You'll be able to apply for your dealer accreditation.
So just on that, Lindesay, just a point, the 6 weeks, after the 6 weeks, there's a couple of weeks in which the marking needs to occur, moderation needs to occur, and your results get back. So it'll actually be 8 weeks before you can, in an elapsed time sense. Yep.
And so, as I said before, also with the way that these units work is that there's self-study for 3 of the weeks. The 4th week is the workshop, and then you have 2 more weeks to get everything completed. So this cadence will keep going throughout the year, and each term there will be a number of the units offered so that people can get through. And we think that this 6 weeks allows people to get through what they need to get through and also be able to meet the learning outcomes. Okay, and then the all-important question of how you actually enroll. So we've talked about how you cover the units. There is differential pricing for people who are employed by Afma members and those who are not. And obviously at the end of it, if you complete all 4 units, you get that micro-credential, which is the financial market certificate. If you have any questions about how this all works, you are most welcome to email that email address on the left. And that website on the right is the one which has all of the details on the units, on the program itself, and also how to, or what's involved in recognition of prior learning. And you should go to that website to view how to enroll.
Great, thanks, Lindesay. So we do have just a couple of questions just to finish off the webinar and information session today. Guy, could you just talk around how the RPL process would work? We've got a great question there from Nathan.
Yep, thanks Nathan for the question. So I think first of all, let's just make sure that there's two types of recognition of prior learning. And so absolutely what we want to make sure, and one of the key themes here is we don't want people studying things they already know. We're all too busy to do that. So let's just talk about the two types of RPL. So there could be the situation where somebody comes from overseas to Australia, has got many years experience, and they would look for accreditation RPL, and that would be a separate process, and it's one that we're currently defining. So if somebody's got a significant experience and comes from overseas, they would be encouraged to apply for recognition of prior learning through an accreditation RPL. And then there's a process yet to be defined, which would look at particularly, you know, are they familiar with the regulatory environment here? Are they familiar with conduct and ethics? So that process is yet to be defined. So if we bring the conversation back to the academic RPL, there is in the situation, the way Lindesay was saying, that we've broken these modules down. So very much this case, you know, financial markets concepts, if somebody has got through their studies, the learning objectives which are required for that unit, and they can demonstrate a passing of a challenge test, so they can show that they got the Afma learning outcomes for that unit covered, then that's a pathway they can consider. I think the question also questioned about whether, you know, if you've got no formal academic qualifications, that is going to be unlikely that you're going to get an RPL through that process, through the academic RPL, unless you've got some graduate qualification that demonstrates you've got the learning outcomes that are required for that particular unit.
Thanks very much, Guy. So the last three questions that we have from Gillian, Stephanie and Jason are all very similar, and it was really around completing each unit sequentially and not being able to either complete 2 or more units concurrently, and if people want to take just the elective, do they have to wait for term 3 to do so? If you could just clarify that, I'll put that back to Lindesay.
Well, the program is designed to be done sequentially, and that's also designed so that it doesn't impinge on your work too much. So that's the reason why we have done that. Now, could you do them at the same time? I guess it's possible. I mean, we have full-time students now, but it's a massive amount of time that you'd need to devote to it. So unlikely. Guy, I don't think we've actually considered having full-timers.
No, well, and also in terms of the design, we've structured it so that the one unit builds on to the other unit. So, you know, to the point that Lindesay was showing, you were showing earlier on about the electives. I mean, there are some things that previously were in the electives, such as some of the risk management and know your customers, that have been brought into risk management principles. And that's one of the challenges in people moving across and trying to do things in parallel. So I think we need to explore the practicalities of that, but I think there's a workload issue, and also there is a question of how the integration would work for a participant. So I think we'd have to be careful about that.
I'd say, just to add one more thing, each of those 6 weeks is roughly 75 hours in total of work. So if you wanted to do 2 at the same time, that's 150 hours over 6 weeks. That's a lot. I don't think that's necessarily going to be practicable.
Okay, and just on that last point, that if someone just wanted to take that one elective and that elective is only in term 3, I guess they just have to wait for term 3, is that correct?
So the reason why term 3 has been chosen, if you start off with somebody who got an RPL and didn't do financial markets concepts, then they could do financial markets transactions in term 1, they'd do risk management principles in term 2, and then they'd be ready for term 3. If there was sufficient demand for an earlier taking of the electives, that would be offered, but there's no pathway that I can conceive that would require, unless people wanted just to do the elective, and then the question is what the demand would be, whether we'd have sufficient demand for that. So we could look at that as a standalone offering. But that's something we'd be happy to look at. But it would, we'd be looking at the numbers. Would be a question mark.
Okay, thank you, Guy. Well, that wraps up our information session for today on the Financial Market Certificate with Afma and Macquarie Business School. Thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate all of you being here and asking all of those fantastic questions. If you have any further questions, you can go to our email there, which is professional.education@business.mq.edu.au. You'll also find further information such as a brochure and everything you need to register on the website there, mq.edu.au, business/credentialed-programs. All of this webinar will also be available on the webpage, and any other information that you need, please don't hesitate to give us a call or contact us. Thank you very much to our speakers today. Our guest, obviously, David Lynch, CEO of Afma, Lindesay Brine, our key presenter and course director, and of course, Dr. Guy Schofield. Also, thank you for your time in the Q&A. Thank you and have a great day.